You've been going over it again. The same scenario, the same possible outcomes, the same loop of thoughts you can't seem to exit, no matter how many times you run through it. And somewhere in there, a part of you believes this is helping. That if you keep turning it over long enough, something will become clear. That the worry is preparing you for what might go wrong. That it's protecting you. You know it's not working. You can feel it in the way your body holds all that tension, in the way your jaw tightens, in the way rest doesn't come at night. But you keep going anyway, because stopping feels like walking away from the problem, and walking away feels like danger. So you stay in it. You go over the same details, the same what-ifs, the same worst-case scenarios, not because you want to, but because it feels like doing something. And doing something feels safer than sitting still. And you're not alone in this. Buddhism has understood this pattern for a very long time, not as a personal flaw, but as something the mind does, when it hasn't been shown another way. That's what we're going to look at today. And you felt this, that moment when the worrying gets louder, not quieter. When thinking about the problem makes it feel bigger, not smaller. When one concern multiplies into 3, and 3 into 10, and none of them actually bring you closer to anything real. Buddhism has a name for this. It's called Papañca. It means the mind's tendency to proliferate, to build on itself, to take one thought and keep building a larger and larger structure around it. One uncertainty becomes a chain of questions, and each question opens another door. Here's what Papañca actually looks like in practice. You notice something uncertain in your life. Maybe it's something at work, something in a relationship, something about the future, and the mind doesn't sit with that uncertainty. It starts building. It starts asking, what if? What if this goes wrong? What if I can't handle it? What if I missed something? What if I'm already too late? And none of those questions resolve anything. Each one just opens more doors, more scenarios to run, more outcomes to anticipate, more threats to prepare for. Buddhism doesn't say the mind does this because you're weak or anxious by nature. It says the mind does this because it was never shown how to stop. Because somewhere earlier in your life, staying alert to threat felt like staying safe. The mind learned that lesson completely. It learned that thinking about a problem is at least doing something, even when that something never actually solves the problem, even when it only exhausts you before anything has happened. And so here you are now, running the same process, still treating worry like a tool, still believing that if you just think about it enough, something will resolve. But Papañca doesn't resolve anything. It feeds itself. Every new what if creates 3 more. Every time you try to think your way to safety, the number of things to think about grows. Because the mind in this mode isn't trying to find the answer. It's trying to cover everything. And you can never cover everything. So the loop continues. And the loop continuing feels like evidence that the threat is still there, which triggers more worry, which keeps the loop going. Here's what that loop actually feels like from the inside. You start with one specific fear, and the mind doesn't stay there. It connects that fear to other fears. It finds evidence from the past that something like this has happened before. It projects that evidence into the future. It builds a narrative in which the bad outcome is already almost certain. And in that narrative, the worry makes perfect sense. Of course you're worried. Look at everything that points in this direction. But the evidence supporting the fear is being gathered by the same mind that generated the fear. The mind is building the case and evaluating the case at the same time. And when the same voice is both judge and jury, the verdict is never actually in question. Now here's where it starts to get harder. Because you don't just worry out of habit. You worry because on some level it feels like the responsible thing to do. There's a belief underneath. The worry that has been running quietly for a very long time. The belief says that people who don't worry aren't paying attention. That worry means you care. That worry means you're taking this seriously. That if you stopped worrying, something would slip through. Something would catch you off guard. And that belief has been protecting itself, justifying the pattern, making the worry feel not just normal, but necessary. It's worth looking at that belief directly, because it's doing more damage than the worry itself. Think about it this way. You prepare for a difficult conversation. You run through every possible version of it in your head, every response they might give, every way it could go wrong, every word you might say that lands badly. You're not doing this to torture yourself. You're doing it because it feels like preparation. It feels like being responsible, like showing up ready for whatever happens. But by the time the conversation actually happens, you're already depleted. You've spent your energy on 10 versions of a conversation when only one of them will ever actually happen. And then you're surprised when you feel drained, before you've even opened your mouth. The worry didn't protect you from the hard conversation. The worry was the hard conversation. You had it a dozen times in your head before you had it once in real life. And your body absorbed the weight of every single version. The nervous system doesn't distinguish between the imagined and the real. It responds to the story the same way it would respond to the event itself, which means you've already been through it before it has even happened, which means you arrive at the actual moment, already worn down by a version that never existed. If this is landing for you, there's more of this kind of conversation on the channel. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Buddhism observed something very precise about the structure of the mind. It noticed that there are two distinct ways the mind can engage with experience. There is direct perception, seeing what is actually present in this moment, and there is conceptual overlay, the layer of interpretation. The mind adds on top of what's present. Worry lives entirely in that second layer. When you worry, you're not in contact with the problem. You're in contact with your mind's story about the problem. And that story is never accurate. It's always either darker than what's real or lighter than what's real. Because reality doesn't unfold in narratives. Reality just happens, one moment at a time. And your mind's story about what might happen exists in a future that doesn't exist yet. You are spending your present in a place that hasn't arrived. Right now, whatever you're worried about, it isn't happening in this moment. The threat your mind is preparing for is not in this room, but your nervous system is responding as if it is. Your body is processing the story, the same way it would process the actual event. That's what worry does at its core. It collapses the distance between now and then. It makes the imagined threat feel as immediate as a real one. So you pay the full price of the threat without the threat even being present. You pay it over and over, each time the thought returns. And the thought keeps returning, because the mind in worry mode treats the return of the thought as evidence that the threat is still there, which triggers more worry, which brings the thought back again. This is what the loop looks like when it's been running for a long time. The Buddha said something that goes directly to the center of this. He said, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world." That's not a motivational phrase. It's a precise description of how suffering is built from the inside out. The world you inhabit right now is not just the external world. It is also the world your thoughts have constructed around you. And if your thoughts are built on worry, on projection, on the constant anticipation of what could go wrong, then that is the world you are living in, not the one that's actually unfolding, the one your mind assembled from threat and the accumulated habit of vigilance. Buddhism isn't asking you to replace worried thoughts with positive ones. It's asking something more fundamental. It's asking you to see the construction itself, to notice that there is a builder, and the builder is the mind, and the building never stops on its own unless you look directly at the process. That seeing, that moment of recognition is the beginning of something different. And this is where the concept of dukkha becomes important. Dukkha is usually translated as suffering, but the original image is more specific. It's the image of a wheel with an axle that doesn't fit quite right. There's friction, there's resistance, that grinding sensation of things not moving the way they should. And Buddhism says the root of that friction is this: you are trying to hold on to something that cannot be held. You are trying to control something that was never fully in your hands. Worry is a control strategy. Underneath the what-ifs, underneath all that preparation, there is a fundamental attempt to manage outcomes that are not yours to manage. The things you worry about most are exactly the things out of your control. That's what makes them the object of worry in the first place. If you could control them, you would just act. But because you can't, the mind keeps circling, keeps trying to find the angle, keeps believing that one more round of thinking will yield the answer. And the worry doesn't change the outcome. It changes how you feel right now. It takes future uncertainty and imports it into the present. And then you suffer twice. Once in anticipation of what might happen, and once if it actually does. There's something particular about the things your mind chooses to hold on to. They're rarely small inconveniences. They're the things at the center, the relationships that matter most, the work that defines something about who you are, the health of people you love, the future you're building. And because they matter so much, the thought of losing them carries real weight. Buddhism doesn't say the fear is irrational. It says the way your mind relates to the fear is costing you more than the fear is worth. The things you care about are worth protecting, but the way to protect them is not to live in perpetual anticipation of losing them. The protection you're looking for doesn't come from the worry. It comes from the presence that the worry has been consuming. Something is shifting in how you understand this, because you're beginning to see what worry actually takes from you. Not just energy, not just the hours you lost at night. It takes your presence. Every hour you spend inside a future scenario is an hour you weren't here. Not in the conversation happening in front of you, not in the meal, the walk, the quiet moment with someone you care about. You were in a place that doesn't exist yet, fighting a battle that may never come. And the people around you, the moments around you, they moved through without you fully inhabiting them. That is the deeper cost. Not the exhaustion, though that's real. It's the accumulation of all the moments you were technically present for, but weren't actually in, because the most essential part of you was already somewhere else. Buddhism offers a practice that speaks directly to this. It's called Sati, often translated as mindfulness. But more precisely, it means clear seeing. Seeing what is actually here, without the overlay of what might be or what was. Sati is not about forcing yourself to calm down. It's not about replacing worried thoughts with better ones through effort. It's about recognizing the difference between what is actually present right now and what is a story the mind has built around a fear. The practice begins simply, not by trying to eliminate the worry, but by noticing it. There it is again. The thought about the thing I can't control, just that act of naming it, quietly, does something real. It creates a small space between you and the thought. The thought is still present, but now you are watching it rather than being inside it. You are the one observing the pattern rather than the pattern itself. And in that watching, something important becomes clear. The thought is a thought. not a prediction. Not a warning from some all-knowing part of you, just a mental event that arose, the way all mental events arise. And it will pass, the way all mental events pass. What Sati offers is not the absence of worry, it's a different relationship to it. One where you see it clearly enough that it can't take up the whole room. One where there's enough space around it to also notice what else is here. The breath, the moment, the actual present that the worry was covering. That space, even a small one, changes everything. Because from inside the worry, there are no options. But from even a little distance, you start to see that you have a choice about how much authority you give to what the mind is generating. But here's what nobody tells you about this. Knowing the worry isn't working and actually being free of it, those are not the same thing. You've probably known for a long time that worrying doesn't help. You've told yourself to stop. You've tried distraction, tried logic, tried to reason your way out of the loop, and still you came back. Because the worry is not a choice you're making in this moment. It's a pattern that was built long before you were making choices about it. Maybe you grew up in an environment where vigilance was genuinely necessary, where staying alert to what might go wrong actually did serve a purpose. And the mind learnt that lesson so completely, so efficiently, that it kept applying it long after the original situation was over, long after you were in a different life, in different circumstances entirely. The mind kept the pattern because the pattern once worked, and it didn't stop to ask whether it was still needed. Buddhism doesn't say you were wrong to learn it. It says you're allowed to learn something new. You're allowed to recognize when a strategy that once served you has become the source of the suffering you're trying to protect yourself from. That recognition isn't failure. That recognition is the beginning of a different kind of care. The Buddha also said this: in the sky there is no distinction of east and west. People create distinctions out of their own minds and then believe them to be true. The dangers you're most afraid of live in exactly that space. Your mind drew a line. Your mind created a category called things that could go wrong. And then it started filling that category with everything it could find. And then it started treating that category as a map of what's real. But it's not a map of reality. It's a map of the mind's fears. And the territory those fears describe, much of it was built, not discovered. Constructed by a mind trying to protect itself, by imagining everything it needed to be protected from. What the mind constructed, the mind can also see for what it is. Not through force, not through effort, but through the kind of clear, steady looking that becomes possible when you're not entirely inside the story anymore. Here's something that tends to catch people when they first encounter this. You might think that if you stopped worrying, you'd stop caring, that the worry was what kept you engaged, kept you trying, kept you from being careless. You might believe that worry is what love looks like. That responsibility looks like vigilance. But worry and care are not the same thing. Care moves toward what matters. Care shows up in what you actually do, in the presence you bring, in the action you take. Worry circles what might go wrong. Worry lives in imagination, in projection, in the endless rehearsal of loss. You can love something deeply without spending your energy on scenarios that may never happen. You can be a responsible, attentive person without running every disaster through your head every day. There's a moment many people describe when they first begin to see this clearly. A moment when they realize they've been treating the anxiety as proof that they care, but the anxiety was never proof of love. It was proof of how tightly the mind was gripping the outcome. And gripping the outcome, Buddhism points out, is not the same as caring for what matters. Love can hold what it cares about with open hands. Worry grips so tightly it can't let the moment breathe. In fact, The more energy you drain into worry, the less you have for actual presence. The less available you are for the real moments that need you there. Not the version of you that's already somewhere in a future that hasn't arrived. The version of you that's actually in the room, in the moment, with the people who are here. And that's what this comes down to. The worry told you it was protecting you, and you believed it for a long time. Maybe because it was the only strategy you had. Maybe because staying vigilant felt like the only way to feel like you were doing something. But you've been carrying this for a long time now, and carrying it hasn't protected you from the things you feared. It's only changed how you feel while waiting for them. It's made you more tired, more tense, less present. You don't have to solve all of this today. Buddhism doesn't ask for that. It asks for something much smaller. One moment of seeing the pattern for what it is. One moment of noticing the worry and recognizing it as a pattern rather than a truth. That one moment is enough. That single point of clarity is the beginning of something real. Not the end of worry overnight, but the beginning of a relationship with it where you're not entirely inside it, where there's just enough space to choose what you do with it. And the moment of seeing it clearly doesn't require you to be free of it completely. It just requires you to be honest about what it is, not a protector, not a faithful guardian of everything you care about. A habit, a very old, very practiced habit. One that served a purpose once and now runs on its own. You can watch it run without being run by it. That is the whole practice. There's something worth sitting with before this closes. If what drives the worry is the fear of being caught off guard, consider what actually prepares you for difficult moments. It's not having rehearsed every possible version of them in your head. It's being fully present when they arrive. Presence is the real preparation. Being here, clear and grounded, and actually inhabiting the moment. That is what allows you to respond to what's real, not to the version your mind built 3 days ago. The most prepared version of you is not the one who has covered every disaster scenario. It's the one who is actually here when the moment comes. If your mind tends to loop, to circle, to keep returning to the same worry, there's something else on this channel worth looking at. The other side of this, where the mind doesn't spiral but goes completely flat instead, where you stop feeling much of anything and the silence feels heavier than any thought ever did. That's a different kind of exhaustion, and it's worth looking at too. This channel exists to help you see what's actually happening inside your mind every single day. If that's the kind of clarity you're looking for, subscribe. There's more here.